same problem, getting stupid screens on.
There's still nobody out that I can see that signed in, so I don't think anyone missed it. So thank you to all the guests and supporters. Thank you to everybody. I was contacted by several people on the committee this week saying, I have a hard stop at 9 o'clock. So we're going to manage this meeting to a hard stop at 9 o'clock. And that includes, I have to lock the door. So let's aim for 8:55 on the way out. And maybe I should say the new chair has to lock the door at 8:55 or at 9 o'clock, and it'll require a few minutes of training. All right, let's have a roll call, which is item 2. Dale. Here. Lynn. Not here. Craig.
Here.
Mary Ann. Chris. Hello. Ray. Jerry. Rick. Bud. Randy. Excellent. We have a quorum. Number 3. Does anyone have any oral communications or suggestions to the agenda? Going once, going twice. Excellent. Okay. Item 4, the minutes of the last meeting were attached. I guess the proper parliamentary procedure is to get a motion to approve, then we debate. Okay, are there any comments or debates?
I have a comment. I usually haven't reviewed them because I'm working on transcripts and other things, but I don't think the section on the evacuation and the parent discussion about parent issues and shelter in place is, I think it should be adjusted. It was a pretty fulsome discussion. There's just like one line and it mentions emotional parent issues. So I think how we frame this is important. And obviously I thought it was an important issue. There was quite a bit of discussion about it. So I think that should be reflected in the minutes. And I know it's time consuming for Lynn, so I'd be happy to volunteer to help her work on that. And so I'll reach out to her. I don't think we took action on it, no. I think there are key elements that it missed and.
Do you have a suggestion that we could do now? I'm not sure what happens if we don't.
I mean, even if it said, substantive discussion of raised important issue, just something like that, or if the language is changed from emotional parent issues, I think that's just a pretty problematic way to frame the
Where
area.
is that?
It's just 8C. I mean, I'm happy to do something expedited.
I'm looking
Sure,
for
okay.
which section you want modified. Subcommittee reports?
Issue of parent objections to shelter in place policy addressed and discussed. Something like that, pretty factual, but at least it's sort of referencing, something important. Okay. I don't want to take a lot of time.
Okay, is that wording acceptable? Yeah. Did you actually capture it? One more time.
Issue raised regarding parent objection to shelter in place policy and discussion. Okay, even if it just changed, issue of parent objections to shelter in place and evacuation risk regarding that. That's what it really is about. Just rephrase emotional parent issues to issue regarding, parent objection to, school shelter in place policy.
Jerry, is that okay with you?
Well, I mean, for example, I quoted Commissioner Rodney Krasinski's comments that he doesn't think that should be the policy, and he doesn't think that it will be followed, and that's a significant, and I'm pointing out that's a significant risk under an evacuation order if the school goes into shelter in place. So, okay.
Yep.
Got issue raised regarding shelter in place for schools during evacuation by parents.
That sounds fine to me. Thank you.
So I move that minutes be approved with this addition. As amended.
Thank you.
Actions? Excellent. Minutes approved with an amended. Good. Item number 5, most important one. We need to nominate leadership of the committee for next year and then take the vote.
Second.
All right, do we have any other nominations? I would certainly, like I said last time, I would do it, but I feel like we could use new blood, new leadership. And Craig, you may not appreciate the nomination, but I'm going to nominate you. I think
So what I'd like
Great.
to, I'd like to suggest I'd be vice chair, so I can come up to speed and then think about the chair next time around. Correct. Sure. My pleasure.
do we have any other nominations for chair? So
Okay.
many qualified people here.
Not a chance, huh? Okay. Understood.
The only leverage I have is that we need to be done by 9. I think we'll keep this issue open for a while, waiting for other nominations for chair.
Works for me.
All right, we have one nomination for chair, one nomination for vice chair. We need a secretary as well.
Have we discussed this with Lynn, or should continue?
We have not, but she's not here to defend herself.
Easy
There's
way
a,
out.
there's a rule about that. Let me see if she's on there. Hold on.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think we're, I'm thinking through the process here. Can we nominate and elect her based on her willingness to do it? I really do feel bad voting to put someone in an office when they're not here to say yes or no. She can decline and then we could have a follow-up vote. All right. So Lynn has been nominated by Dale. Is there a second? All right, all in favor? All right. So we have 3 nominations. Nominations are still open. Nominations, okay, nominations closed. All in favor? Aye. Now let's take a vote. I guess the motions. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Abstentions, nays? Okay. Thank you. Looking forward to another great year. I want. Can't even lead my way out of this job, let alone the committee. All right, the next item is a discussion of the EPC priorities as analyzed and ranked by the subcommittee. And I've got to say, I don't know if I was officially on the subcommittee or just attended it, but you guys did a great job. And I think there's a great work product here. If I remember right, what we decided is that Vic is the spokesperson.
Right, so keeping this brief and recognizing.
Maybe turn on your microphone.
There we go. Keeping this brief and recognizing that there's a great deal that could be discussed about this list. Hopefully, at least you've had an opportunity to look at it in advance of the meeting, and I'll just give a few brief comments on it before I open up for any discussion we want to have. Our goal was basically well, let me go back just a word about the history. Section 5 of the Portola Valley Evacuation Study made 14 recommendations for future and ongoing activities. And in October of 2022, the EPC reported our initial recommendations. EPC was thereafter requested to prioritize the list of responsibilities for further submission to the town council and their staff for implementation. And the remaining step was for the EPC to review and approve with the coordination of the staff for future presentation to town council what those priorities were. We subsequently had, our subcommittee had several meetings and discussions yielding the chart, which was included in your materials, reviewing the various items that were to be assigned out for responsibility. So our goal was to basically prioritize this list for presentation to our committee and then to the town council as appropriate for what action they wanted us to take. Now, the chart that, in fact, Craig was really wonderful in putting together to help capsulize our various discussions and meetings, you will note, identifies the items. I think that the primary thing to look at, if you have that chart, I enlarged mine. I know for some of you, it's really small in print. Yeah, right. We'll keep that in mind in our discussion. But basically what we did is we identified the various items and then gave them, if you will, a low, medium, and a high priority, and where there was a little bit of an extra push, either a high plus or a medium plus or minus if it got to be close. And the key column for this discussion, and obviously this is where we got to, time is tight. I don't know how we're going to do all of this, but we'll do our best. The key is you'll see that it says EP responsibilities let's see, it's about the 5th or 6th column out. It says EPC responsibilities to be populated by the subcommittee for follow-up on our meeting. And basically what this says, given our limited staff capabilities in town, if these items that are listed here are to be done, then we need somebody in order to, from this committee is going to need to volunteer their services, or we got to find somebody as a volunteer from the community to do it. So that was the goal in terms of listing it and then identifying who we were going to have that was going to take the responsibility. So just by way of one example, and then I'll finish my introduction here. If you take a look at the first item, which was given a very high priority, which is a shelter-in-place infrastructure, identifying locations and preparedness, the EPC responsibility was to not do this, but to advocate and identify, to get the list done, work with the Woodside Fire Department, coordinate with them. And we needed somebody basically to determine what needs to be done next with WFD or with whomever to see that this issue of shelter in place, which is a high priority, is accomplished. And obviously to set up some kind of a time deadline to get that done. So that's the one example I would give. To go down each of these items would more than take our hour of time. I don't know what we might suggest other than saying this is what we recommend to the EPC. I don't know if we need some offline conversation in order to find out who's willing to take some responsibility to follow up on the items as they hear, but that's what's been done by the subcommittee, and we recommend that's the next step that needs to be taken.
Yeah, no, thank you for that introduction. Can I ask a quick question? Are these ranked in the order of importance? I noticed the first one is an H, not an H plus.
Right.
Yes, they are ranked in order. So the first 3 or 4 are.
I
the
see
first
new
3 are
ranking
H
is
plus.
column 3.
Thank you.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah,
I have a quick comment here.
Sure.
Great work on this.
thanks, Dale.
And it has to do with the third one on this list. And it actually ties into number 1. Before we can figure out how to open the EOC, we need to redo the EOP, the Emergency Operations Plan. And that takes guidance from the town council and the town manager. And to be quite honest, I'm not sure that we're going to even get that within the first quarter. Because there's a big deal here, whether most of this committee knows. The EOC used to be staffed by volunteers, and I think that's the way it's currently stated in the EOP. Then under a prior town manager, it was determined they would all be town staff. And the volunteers, which was essentially us, were completely shut out. There was some training that went on. Anybody who was trained for the EOC is gone. And so now we have a whole new administration, both in town council and in town staff. And there needs to be a decision about whether the town wants to have it staffed by volunteers or by town staff. So
Or
that,
combination, or combination.
or a combination, yeah. And so that's the first thing that has to take place, because once that determination is made, then you can update the EOP, bring that up to speed, and then you can figure out how to staff the EOC. And so that ties your third on the list and the number 1 on the list.
Right.
But my concern is, and Jeff can tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think this is going to be on the council agenda for months.
You're right, not any level of detail. And seeing that we don't even have an interim manager, we don't have an acting manager. We don't really have a point person on the staff either. So, and I don't have a good timeline for you for when it's going to happen, but I agree, it's not going to happen right away.
Jeff, while you're there, just because it ties into this, we had an action item together to try and get us on the town council agenda to present our ideas.
Yes.
And there was
It's
back and forth, but basically we're waiting.
We are waiting,
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, honestly, to be fair, the council has early next year is going to have a lot of things. I mean, the new council is going to have a lot of things to deal with. And so it's on the list. They are aware of the request. I'll keep pushing for it.
Thank you.
Dale, what is your risk assessment of continuing to proceed without an updated EOP and with this lack of clarity over who would even staff an EOC in the case of a urgent fire, urgent emergency? How high is that risk? Because maybe that's a mismatch in that Councilmember Alps and other council members don't understand the risk. So as with your experience, what's the risk level?
I feel much better today than I would have 4 or 5 years ago, because we were very active and competent CERT organization. And you have to realize that in almost any situation, Woodside Fire or someone else would be identified as the incident command, and they would have an EOP, and they would open it. And CERT would also open EOP. The challenge becomes, how is that coordinated with the town, and how is the record keeping done for reimbursement of town expenses and so on? So is it an issue? Yeah. Are we at extreme risk? I don't think so, because I feel much better about the volunteers now. 4 or 5 years ago, before CERT built up its presence, I would have been extremely concerned. Now we have a strong CERT organization. Chris and Jerry know that very well. And so that's positive. But I would say from a risk standpoint, you know, this winter is supposed to be fairly mild. And we still could get a big, you know, atmospheric river. But it would be really nice if we had some action before the next fire season. So if we got this all fixed in the second quarter, that would be great.
Let me add my own thoughts on that, which is we actually, in some ways, had an incredibly successful year, and thanks to the fire department and Kim's leadership on that, we have an evacuation plan, right? So the fire department is all over. The biggest risk that people are worried about today is what to do in a wildfire. And it's very clear who's in charge, what they do. And it doesn't really require, quite honestly, the opening of the town EOC. In fact, what role might the town EOC play in a short-term fire situation? It's not much. Most likely the action for people who would be in that EOC is to evacuate and let the fire department lead what's going on and fight the fire. I think the one that is kind of left more open is a longer term. It's the earthquake or another longer term kind of disaster where there's time for the town to coordinate things, to declare there's political things you need to do. You need to declare an emergency to get access to emergency funds and such. And I think that's left a little vague, but I think in terms of a short-term acute emergency, I feel pretty comfortable that the right things would happen. I don't know how other people feel.
I would just add that CERT Incident Command would be able to establish communications with the county. So they're just, it's hard to come up with the real role for the town, other than you would hope they'd want to be involved and know what's going on. But between the fire department and CERT, they're going to be the action people. You know, the town manager is not going to run around, you know, hauling injured people to a aid station. So it's, I think the bases are covered. It's just a little awkward that we don't have a EOC policy yet, but we will over time. We will.
Yeah, Sharif raised the issue of revisiting whether we should open an EOC as kind of a first step, but I guess I still worry that there are certain things that are at the intersection of agency responsibility and town responsibility, or have been town responsibility in the past, but now with reduced staff, reduced priority, that ball's dropped and it's not apparent that it is. Like, you know, for example, finding out that the AM radio was down for a month in fire season for like the month of September, just wasn't operational. And we weren't able to get prioritization and support of that. You know, that was really concerning, because that is, you know, it was my understanding that was a critical capability. And learning that it's just down, but it's not publicized, that seems like a major problem. And like Woodside Fire, that's not Woodside Fire's responsibility. But is it, again, it wasn't clear whether that was the EPC responsibility, whether that was town staff. You know, that I think there's things particularly related to communication and community outreach and dispersal of information that I think that I worry is in a compromised state, and there's not enough awareness around that.
Well, getting back to the first, just, you can see the discussion this is generating. It's really very time consuming. And I'd like to get an idea of what the EPC would like to do with all of this, because we do have the shelter in place is one aspect of it that's mentioned here as a high priority. My charge here was to present this to the EPC, and then in turn to give some report back to the town council as to what was happening with all of this. So I'd like to get some guidance on whether we want to have some further conversation about this in detail with our committee as a whole, or where we want to go with this procedurally. Now that it's been laid out with the priorities, the question is, what does the EPC want to do with it? And my sense is we probably need to have some kind of a more fulsome conversation in the EPC because there's pretty strong feelings about this, which may mean putting this off to another meeting with an additional focus on it, or a special meeting being held to do it if we think it is important enough. My sense is this is pretty important. I mean, we're really laying out here what we're going to be doing, what we're expecting the town to do, and what's realistic for us to do given what our resources are. So I feel there's a bit of sense of urgency in getting it done, but I recognize we're getting out of the fire season, knock on wood, so there may not be an immediacy as there was before. So I'd recommend we come up with some process to get a more fulsome look of this by the EPC, finalize what our priorities are here, and then report back to the town council. Unless you want to proceed in some other
No,
way, Chris.
I actually think very similarly. I think it's important for the whole committee to have time to digest this, to hear today's summary and introduction, maybe have a brief discussion, although time will be our enemy. And then we have a subsequent meeting of the whole committee, either a special meeting or we simply dedicate almost all of the agenda to our January 1 to working through this.
Practically speaking, unless the committee wants to meet independently, I'd recommend, I think we have the time to do this, put it on the agenda for the next meeting with the understanding either it's maybe a little bit longer meeting or it's going to be the major part of the meeting for us to really define what the responsibilities are here. And then we hold off any report back to the town council until such time as we finish our discussion. I just want to emphasize to all of us that with the limited availability of staff, as you look at these tasks, please look at what we're going to need volunteers outside of the town staff to do those responsibilities that we put on a high priority here. So that's going to be us or getting people in asking people in the community to help us out.
I agree with that. And reading this, and I can give an input from, one of our members who's not here today, Ray, is that basically each one of these is probably bigger than anything we've done in the past. And in a sense, that means picking one, maybe two, that we think we could have some kind of substantive input on. And we should also recognize it may not align with what the council wants us to do. And so we go through a lot of trouble, unfortunately, and recommend, and they may go a different direction, although I kind of doubt it.
I do too.
I think we've thought about this. It's our charge. We have a certain domain knowledge about it. I think that will be respected, and there'll be, just like we're having our first introduction to it and we're going to need some time to discuss. I think we should expect that when we put it in front of the council as well.
Yeah, I think with some pre-discussion with town council members especially,
Yes.
I think we'll get a very sympathetic response to our thoughts with respect to a realistic prioritization of what we want to do.
So I'm in agreement, and I'm ready to make it the major part of the agenda for our January meeting.
Okay. Is it-
Any other comments from people?
Agree
Discussion?
to that.
Maybe we'll get some comments from the experts in the audience here. Had a chance to look at our list, or any guidance you want to give us, what you want us to recommend to the town?
Good morning, everybody. We have not had time to actually review the list and how it's been prioritized. So at this point, we don't have any recommendations to make. But I think that you're all still on point with the goals that have been assigned and responsibilities to you as a committee. And the recommendations you do make to the council, I think, will be respected because you've spent a lot of time on the subject matter and you all have experience and knowledge historically. And I think with the work that the fire department has done, along with supporting the committee and providing report, I think between the partnership, a lot can come of it just in a start as you start to develop and move forward with these priorities.
I would, I'm sorry, may I comment, Jerry?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that we made some assumptions when we put down this list of what we thought the Woodside Fire Protection District was responsible for, but we don't know that you agree that that is your responsibility. So it would be very useful to get back information from you about whether you think this is out of your scope.
For
You know,
sure. So we
dreamed
will,
this
we'll
up,
review
but it's
it.
not true.
Yeah, yeah.
Or yes, it is your responsibility, and then we just would want to hear from you how you're going to meet that responsibility.
Can we notate that we'll review and at the next meeting
Sure.
next month, we'll have responses to all of it?
Great.
That'd be good. And I would, excuse me, I would note, in the responsibilities, we indicated what needed to be coordinated specifically with WFD, at least as our preliminary thinking, but we welcome and are very receptive to what your feedback is. One of the high priorities you see here about there was a lot of anxiety was the shelter in place issue. And that's the
Mhm.
reason it's
Yeah.
very much, we just don't have the expertise to make any judgments about that really at all compared to what your expertise would be. So please focus on that one if you would. okay?
Definitely. I know that's been a sensitive topic, not just as a district, but specifically for parents in schools.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
In the evacuation plan, I just want to try to differentiate between the TRA, the temporary refuge areas, and the shelter in place policy for the Sequoias, for schools. They're connected, but they're distinct issues. But there's a TRA section in the,
Our evacuation plan really doesn't discuss the shelter in place for the schools.
policy, yeah.
Or the Sequoia. Those,
Yeah.
those organizations have their own plan.
Okay.
There's a reason why it's not in that plan, because this evacuation plan was made specific for the town on a town level. Every entity is responsible to have their own, and that's why it's not included in that plan. It does talk about what it is, but not specifically how everyone is to react to it, because that's on their own levels as a school, as the Sequoias, which the Sequoias, they sent to me, all their documents, because I'm reviewing it. I'm doing a presentation with the residents in January. So I asked that they send me all their documents for the evacuation plan so I can review it and be prepared to answer questions, to assist and support the Sequoias with what they've already written. So that's an example. The schools have their own, and it's something that we don't write for them, right? This is a third party usually that you have somebody that writes these for you. But the evacuation plan, that was specific for the town so that they have an overall view of what it would look like should they have to open up that plan.
I think the purpose for us was that we thought that whatever the school plans were, or Sequoia's plans, might be added as an addendum. I mean, not our plan, but here's what their plan is, so that there is one package that lists the entire evacuation
It
issue.
can be done, but that's not normally how it's done because every entity is required by law to have their own. If the committee wanted to recommend that it all get packaged into one large so that it's all written what everybody is doing, that's certainly something can be done. It's just not a normal process that's usually taken.
Real challenge with there, Jerry. We have enough problem keeping our documents up to date. If you include everybody else's, if they update it, then you have to go through and get approval on our document.
I think it's important that from a town point of view, to know what's going to be going on in all these places because, that affects residents as well. Those entities, the school and Sequoias affects the rest of the town as to what's going on.
I think it's more important that the first responders know. I'm not so sure that, or maybe the members of the EOC, as it opens, but I don't think you want to bend all these documents, because then you're going to have a horrible time with revisions and so on.
Correct. That's what Dale is saying though, Bud. We would be in agreement with that because it's no one's responsibility other than that own entity to know what's going on. If residents or people want to know about it, it's public knowledge. They can access that information if they wanted to review it. But it is on a broader scale. The town would have to be, that means the town falls with the liability of making sure that every single And to, if it was all compiled together, then they're responsible to make sure that everyone is following those actions. And that's not their job. Their job overall is to do what the town's responsibilities are. But the schools, the Sequoias, everyone has their responsibility. And that's why the staff of the school, the staff of the Sequoias, the staff of the town, everyone's trained within their own purview to do what needs to be done in that plan. But then they also receive all recommendation and directives from the fire department from if an EOC opens on what is supposed to be done or what direction they're taking, whether evacuating, shelter in place, whatever is going on within that plan. So they would receive the directives from the fire department. It gets confusing and convoluted if everyone's trying to know what everyone else is doing. Yes, it would directly, yes, there is effect to what schools are doing to the residents, but I don't want to say it's not a resident concern. They should be aware of it, which is why education is important. And I think that's why the document that the EPC originally wrote as the evacuation plan, that first draft, that's why that was recommended as being a great guideline for residents to have an understanding of an interpretation, if you will, of what an evacuation looks like, because that had a lot of good resources and information. But it does need to get updated, so it does run in line closely with the current evacuation plan. So I think that's a great document where you can include information about what the schools are doing or what the Sequoias are doing, because it would just be a guideline. It'd be like information only, rather than making it a adopted document or a document that is legally looked at as this is what it is. So maybe putting that information out there would be helpful for residents to be aware, but not for it to be part of that evacuation plan for the town.
I think you're absolutely right, but that's what I mean by having it sort of as the addendum. So if somebody wanted to understand the full evacuation process for the town of Portola Valley, they could go to one document, and in that would be a section that included schools, even though we're not responsible, or Sequoias.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't have to be digging in different places. That's
Yep.
all.
And that guideline's a good document to include that in.
And maybe we should stop. We're actually starting to do the work as opposed to.
I just had a procedural question that might be important. So we've kind of asked the Woodside Fire Protection District to look and review. Should they have contact information? So for us or to us, in case they have a question about our list and how we came up with it. Because this came up, within the subcommittee.
If the question is, should, I can't tell the fire department what to do, but if the question is, if they have a question.
Should we just
to
have an
any-
informal, even informal?
Yeah.
You can
I would
look
say-
at this, give us your feedback. So
Of
at the
course.
next meeting, we will have a coordinated
Right,
response to the next step.
right. So any member of this committee should feel free to talk to anybody on the fire department, get input and just report that stuff back. I
Yeah, and
don't
vice
need
versa.
it to go through a single channel. And I think you all have access to us. If not directly one contact away, you can reach out to me. or
And,
get
and I would
anybody's
offer,
phone
Kim,
number.
you should feel free to contact me and I will keep the rest of
Yeah,
our
that's fine.
subcommittee informed,
Yep, and that's what I was after.
or any other way you want to do it, okay? And then we'll have a coordinated response next time.
Okay, perfect.
Let's do one more point and then move on from this.
I think with this, it's worth considering where this feedback goes, for example, on the responsibilities, because it seems like a lot of that information should be in the evacuation plan. So if the evacuation plan that's been adopted doesn't adequately address it, it seems like the end result here should be a revision in that plan. And I think that's the situation for a fair number of these items. And so, this discussion about, how do we link the actual evacuation plans for some of the major entities like the large schools and the Sequoias, I do think there's a way to link it without introducing too much burden, like a short summary. And then I think it is important to point to where the permanent reliable location of those other plans is, even if they're not incorporated fully as the full text of them. So that the evacuation plan that's adopted as a whole does point to the important other evacuation plans that really do impact the rest of the town, because that's
We'll definitely keep that in mind.
Right, we'll keep it in mind.
Good point.
And I mean, we still have to decide what, are we going to focus on enhancing the evacuation plan? Are we going to focus on the EOP for the
That's a good
town?
point.
How that influences EOC for the town, how that influences coordination with CERT. And I'd like to just introduce that concept to the conversation today again about coordination with CERT, which has done so much work.
Yeah.
And there are structures and procedures and incident commands, and got a great link with Woodside Fire. In the past, we've actually had a dedicated room here for CERT to have as an incident command post. I don't even know if that's still part of the plan. Should it be part of the plan with all the mobile stuff we have now? I think that's worth considering as we think about the EOP for the year. Let's
I have one other point, and maybe this would be Jeff's parting shot at us or gift to us. That as you kind of peruse this, you know, our responsibility, I think, or our mission as a committee is to advise the council. So we've got some stuff on here that's more than advising the council.
Yes.
So are we out of our lane, or how would you interpret?
Jerry, let me just respond to your question. Our goal here was to identify what we thought the next steps were, and it clearly is subject to submitting this to town council and they're being comfortable with what the role is to be played. So this is not to arrogate to us any particular responsibility, but rather identify what the tasks are, and then obviously get the town council, the appropriate representative of the town council, to make sure they're comfortable with it before we attempt to implement any of this.
I understand.
there's
I'm
the
just saying
intermediate step
Jeff's got
of-
a lot of experience, and I would just personally like to hear kind of how he thinks about what the EPC.
Well, let's make that the final comment on this. But I mean, one other thing we have to agree as a committee too. We may not want to even submit something that feels like we're out of our
Yeah,
way.
we gotta
We
get
haven't had
that
a
stuff
chance
done.
for the committee to have that vigorous debate, but
Well,
let's,
first of all, this list is amazing. So thank you. The work on this is really, and I, obviously there's a lot of things on here that are going to fall under somebody else's purview. A lot of these are going to fall under staff purview, either the fire district or the town staff. But as far as a list of, I don't think you're out your lane at all in terms of identifying a set of things that need to be looked at. Like this question about the EOC, staff has trained in the past on the EOC. I don't know that any current staff is trained on the EOC. I'd be surprised if beyond very cursory training. I agree with, as Dale pointed out, it's not something that's going to impede operations, but it is going to be a problem in the aftermath. Council and staff need to address that. So I think in terms of a list, are you going to do all the work on this list? Of course not. Should this whole list be presented to the council as guidance for future decisions? Absolutely.
Good. And that's our intent. And to close this, I do want to thank Jerry, Lynn, and Craig for their work on this. A lot of time was put in this, as you can see. And we're happy to continue it, but I want to especially note the time and effort they put into this to put it together. Thank you.
all right, great. Thank you, everybody. It's 8:47. So I would suggest let's have abbreviated reports. We're on to item 7, which would be Woodside Fire Protection District and CERT.
Morning. I'll make this very brief. I got some correct numbers in terms of our certs. So officially we have 60 well-trained up certs. And within those 60, we have about 24 that are officially badged. So it's a really good number. We also have an event this Saturday, a badging event here at the Logistics and Incident Command Post trailers. So hopefully we'll have more badge certs after the end of this weekend. The only other thing I did want to mention too is that we have our holiday open house on December 18th. It's going to be at Fire Station 7 in Woodside from 6 to 7:30 p.m. So come on by with your families.
All right, thank you.
Okay, making this quick. So I did attend the meeting last month, or yes, we're in December, for the Alpine Road corridor, the last one that San Mateo County had. before the meeting started, I did talk to Tim Chang, who's the, I guess, the director or the lead for the whole project. And I did inquire to him about how they were going to be making decisions on what type of traffic calming device or how they were going to proceed with deciding because of the lack of traffic studies done for each of the possible alternatives that they have out there. And he said that none of that has been done yet until they start to narrow down what the choices are going to be. So I did bring up, okay, so if you do think that maybe a roundabout may be an option, you will do traffic studies that show the delay or the changes in traffic because of the roundabouts. So he said, yes, complete traffic studies would be done. During the meeting, they were kind enough because I was coming back for a council meeting. They allowed me to read, to just provide comments from the fire department's behalf, opposing the, first supporting the project because I think the project has a lot of value. It would increase a lot of safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and the residents who are trying to leave the Ladera area, but also that there are other viable options that were on the table that they've listed that would be much more better options for that area than a roundabout. Some of the highlights that I provided was the roundabout would certainly delay. It's great for calming traffic, but it's not great when it's an emergent response on our side and trying to get our rigs around the those roundabouts. If they're not going to be widening the roads, that would make the roundabouts really tight. And we already have challenges reaching all the way into the furthest parts of Ladera. So that would even delay us even more if there was a medical emergency or any kind of emergency. It also would delay evacuation. With other devices other than roundabouts, at least we can set up traffic control if we needed to, if there was an evacuation emergency. Once there's a roundabout, you can't do anything with it. You can't set up anything. The roundabout's there. It can't be removed. It's permanent. So I did give a lot of information. I have prepared a letter that I told Tim that I would submit formally to the group because they have a team of people who are taking in responses from feedback from residents and people on the discussion for the subject matter. So I have prepared that and that is being sent to them. So just an update on that. We had some red flag warnings twice in the past couple months. And hopefully you saw a lot of the messaging that we put out. We did take into consideration the recommendation we had from Bray at the last meeting talking about adding the AM radio station to our signs. So we are ordering more because we did see areas that we would like to put our signs up. And we will include that radio channel on those new signs that we prepare. Our signs are also versatile. They're not just red flag warning signs. They're also severe weather signs. So we wanted to make sure we had signs that would encompass different types of, weather events. And we also targeted construction. So we did create flyers. We posted them at all the grocery stores. We know that a lot of the construction workers go in and out of those a lot here locally. So we posted them there. We put them at the town billboards because they have to come in for their permits. And starting next year, we will be adding a disclaimer into the permits that we issue discussing red flag warnings and that there should, all the requirements of no specific type of work that cannot be done. So that will be on our permit, part of our permit process. We also, I think I talked about red flag warning on the last meeting, so I'm not going to bring it up again, what we did. There's been several meetings still with the Portola Terrace, and there's been concern on the evacuation for that project on Alpine, that with the increase of all the residential housing and the number of people that are going to be living in that area is how it's going to affect Alpine Road and evacuation. Craig Taylor had brought up proposing widening the Alpine Road to a third lane or turning lanes to help minimize what that load would look like for evacuation. And of course, I said the fire department, we can't require that, but we can certainly support anything that's going to increase the abilities for evacuation out of that area. Let's see. We've been doing all our defensible space inspections. We were able to get a little bit more done this past month. There were 94 home assessments that were completed. That's more than what we normally been able to accomplish, though we're half of the number that we should be doing. Again, our challenge is still that people aren't home and we're not getting people calling to schedule their home assessments. So we're hoping that with more education and putting it out, we're hoping more people will contact us. So it's putting us behind on our timeline. And in completing our zones that we were committed to commit this year, it's going to bleed over into next year to get that completed. And just to keep it short, so that's all I have. If there's any questions, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Well, it's five of. Oh, I'm sorry.
Chime in really
I
quick.
thought-
I don't have
thought
much
you guys were
to,
done.
you guys, and I
Um,
know you guys are pressed for time. As far as some other things the district has been working on, our foundation that you guys all are aware of, we got approval. We asked, we had a battalion chief who's been working with the CERT members, and getting some radios for us to be able to talk to CERT and enhance our command structure with CERT. So the foundation approved $33,000 for that. So we're going to have 15 additional radios that will be in our command vehicles or fire engines. So we'll be able to have the capabilities to talk to CERT in those. Our EOP and DOC documents for our district were just revised. I sent them to the town. I will send them to you guys because they're great documents, and I'll send them for you guys to review. I think you guys should definitely see those and see what we are doing. I did send an email to Corey at the town to try to get us some remote access with the messaging so we can work with Ray on that as far as getting that access. And I'll circle back on that because I haven't heard anything as far as that. But that's all I have. One other thing, actually, one of my notes, I'm working with Brian Kelly through the county, and we're working on the county's putting together a hazard and threat all-encompassing plan. So we are working with them on that. So that's all I have. You guys have any questions?
Excellent. No, thank you. Thank you very much. I can tell you that the access to the AM radio messaging it's in progress. It's caught up in small issues of what's on what side of a firewall and please open the following tunnel. I'm copied on all of those. They're working on it. All right. So thank you very much. Woodside Fire Protection District. I think we might skip over subcommittee reports unless anyone has a pressing issue that they just want to get out there.
Actually, there's some of us on that want to speak after Kim spoke.
Aha. See, we don't have the ability to see who's out there. I can do it. So hold on.
So you want me to go ahead or after time?
Hold on just a second, Christy. I want to do one thing because some of us just absolutely need to leave at 9 o'clock, which is I want to skip ahead to the date of the next meeting. It's currently scheduled for January 2nd. I think that's probably not realistic.
Not if you want it sober.
So how about you just suggest 1 week later? Is that a reasonable? Okay. I also want to make one final comment. I think it's our last meeting with council member Jeff Alps, and thank you for your support and being our advocate. We've enjoyed working with you.
Much appreciated, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff, it's really been great to have somebody with your experience and approach, and we loved having you and we'll miss you.
All right, thank you. Okay, I think with that, Christy, you've got a minute or so. Please.
Okay, thank you, Kim, for speaking. I do also agree with Craig Taylor in getting a third middle lane for safe evacuation for Portola Valley residents, or we're going to get stuck behind Ladera and other future builds on Alpine Road. So I was talking to Marisol, who supports Ray Mueller, and it's really Caltrans owns the road. And so she said, draw out what you think would work and get it to them. So really, how do we start that process is my question. And so I support that idea. And I live on Alpine Road and I would have to deal with it. So I'm more about safety and evacuation than, if we have to lose a little land for evacuation, oh well. I care about getting out alive. I also support the red flag warning signs, getting more of them. And adding it to our permit process officially, getting it in the paperwork and adding it into, so general contractors know when they see the red flag warnings that the work on the site needs to change. And then that list of what the work on the site would change when they see the red flag warnings. Otherwise, we have no control and it continues on as is. Those were my two important comments. And that's it.
Well, thank you very much for making those comments. I'm sorry I didn't see your hand raised. Anybody have a response or? Okay, well, thank you very much. And I think with that, we should have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All in favor?
All right.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'll look forward to seeing you all in the new year.